You haven't heard from them? Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call this continued meeting to order. The first item of business is discussion of nonprofit funding pool applications. And I guess the thing to do is just to go through them and kind of recap each one alphabetically. And I would hope that everybody's read through all the applications so that we're ready to go.
Mayor Scott?
Yes, sir.
I think there's some people here waiting on B, and I think we were going to table B.
That's fine. You want to change the agenda?
Should I make a motion to change the agenda? I'd like to change it. I'd like to scratch B off of the agenda.
For
Table it maybe for another
Table?
meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
All right, any discussion? All right, we'll be tabling B. Do you want to say until when?
Got to get a vote. When it's tabled, or just till somebody brings it back?
That'll be fine, sir. Okay.
Get a vote.
All in favor? All right.
And I do think, just for the council and everybody else is aware of this, I think our intent is to try to put it back on your agenda for as soon as October 1st, so the national license.
That's why I was asking about a time on it there. Okay, the first request is I'm flooded with paper tonight. Do what? Yeah, I know which one it is. It's a matter of finding it. Okay. The Arts Council, they have requested, I know I've got it here too, right here. Okay, they requested an amount of $3,000. What's the feeling of the board about discussion to talk about this particular one before we get the first one? Does anybody have any reservations that you want to make?
On our guidelines, we say they can't be for continuing programs. But as I remember,
Reoccurring.
there you go. Thank you. And you would get to sit next to a teacher.
Funding will not be given on reoccurring basis.
Yeah, but it's the same, but they are reoccurring.
And I have a question. Has the Arts Council lost its state funding?
Yes, it has. We have.
Okay, you have lost the state funding. Have you moved it to Cowee School?
Cowee, yes, the county hasn't lost the funding. The Cowee School Arts and Heritage Center will now be partnering with the North Carolina Arts Council for that's just a specific allocation that the legislature allocates for the counties. They call it the grassroots arts program.
Okay.
It's from through the North Carolina Arts Council.
May I ask? Yeah, go right ahead.
I was just going to interject for a minute, and if I could be Ebenezer Scrooge. We represent about 4,000 people in the town of Franklin. We collect taxes from people within the city limits, and I'm not sure how I feel about the town of Franklin taxing people with the threat of force and doling it out to who we see fit. That point being noted, I think several of these applicants also apply for the county community funding pool and get grants to the county, and that really leaves the town of Franklin taxpayer giving twice. And while I think all these charities are worthwhile, and if it was my money and I was independently wealthy, I think I'd be more liberal with my doling out of the funds. Keep that in mind as we talk up here, that the taxpayer in the town of Franklin is on the hook twice for a lot of these applications.
Let me ask the board if you would have any objection to, let's go through all of these, and as the questions come up, and then come back as far as voting and allocation of the funds. Would that be agreeable with the board?
I've got one question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
This 13,345 that says NCAC grassroots, is that the funding you lost?
Yes, it is.
So that, you will not have that in the next year?
We will not have that
Okay.
coming into the next year.
But the same programs that you've had in, although the physical location is Cowee, the programs you still wish to fund are the programs that you've had on the square and things in town functions have not moved out of the town.
That's what we're asking for support for, to deliver.
That's how I
arts
understand.
programs to the people of Franklin.
Okay.
And actually.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Any further questions on the Arts Council request? No, okay.
Mr. Mayor, just real briefly.
Yes, sir.
I'll just address this.
Yes, sir.
It was brought up, the point that it does say reoccurring, and many of these do. Your grant guidelines have always said no reoccurring funds, because not that it would, if it's otherwise a public purpose and it would be legal for you to give them the funds, you could choose to do it on a recurring basis. But I think that your intent has always been to say, don't make our grant part of your budget every year, because in years before we had even the formality of saying, here's the things we're going to ask you to approve, folks were turning up saying, nonprofits constantly saying, well, you gave us this last year, and if you don't do it again, we're going to close our doors and go away forever. So I think that there's been some misunderstanding from all of these applicants, and every time we've done this, the tendency is to feel like if we don't say recurring, they think we're not serious, we're not going to stay around, or something like that. When what we're really trying to say is just don't count on this funding as your budget tells what project you're going to do that benefits the town. And so, it's not an automatic disqualifier that it says reoccurring if the substance of it really is, this is what we're going to do this one time. And that goes for all your applicants.
Any further on the Arts Council? All right, we'll move on to the Community Care Clinic. Has everybody read about the Community Care Clinic and the services it provides? And do you have any questions, comments? Okay, not hearing any. The next is the Franklin Cemetery Association. A request for $5,000. Okay, any comments, questions before we get into discussion later on? I don't hear any. We'll move on. Habitat for Humanity requested $5,000. Any comments? Questions? Hospice House Foundation requested $5,000. Comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to ask, you had stated that this was to offset expenses for a construction administrator, is that what?
Right.
Can you
We're getting ready to, the bids have gone out to the contractors, and our architect will be our construction administrator, and there's a fee for that, and the $5,000 we're asking is to help offset this fee.
Okay, so it is to help pay for a position then within...
Pardon?
It is to offset expenses for a position that, okay, thank you.
And I interpret that, maybe I'm wrong, as more like a one-time service while the construction's going on. I had the same question.
Right,
You're talking about an employee and a
And how does that work?
Yeah, that would definitely be a big problem. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else around the table? Okay. The next is Kids Place. Does anyone have any questions about Kids Place? I hear none. Macon County Care Network. Anybody have any questions or concerns about Macon County Care Network? Okay, the next is the Macon County Humane Society, requesting $5,000. Any questions on the Humane Society? Let me ask you this, what is the connection to the county with the Humane Society?
the county, is that what you're?
Is there a connection to the county? So it's just the name?
Just the name, that's why we go under Appalachian Animal Rescue.
I was going to ask you if there was a distinction between Appalachian Animal Rescue and the Humane Society, or are they one and the same?
But we were trying to do away with that question that people always had, thinking we were county funded when we're not. So that's why we changed our name.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Macon County Public Library requested $5,000. Any comments on the library request? Comments? Okay. REACH, our domestic violence prevention. Anyone have any questions or comments on REACH? Is anybody here from REACH tonight? Don't see anybody. Okay. Any comments, questions? Read to me. Okay, I had a couple of questions on Read to Me. It's also listed in the Literacy Council request, and I'm a little concerned about the very small group of people that it provides a service to, when that's one of the things we have been asked to be very careful about in making these grants. Any other questions from the board? Yes, sir.
Just quickly, I don't think they just use it for the story walks. I think they actually do some sort of is it a Dolly Parton book program?
Right.
So it probably does affect more kids than we see.
Quite a few households.
It does, but we also have a situation of funding private foundations, and the Dolly Parton Imagination Library seems to fall under that category. Is that not right, Council? We talked about it a little bit.
That could be, Mr. Mayor. I don't remember much about the character of that particular foundation. I know that I would conceive of it as a source of the materials they use for literacy enhancement. And it could be from, that could be from anywhere, I suppose. So I don't know that alone is disqualifying. I do take your point, though, that, you do have two different literacy-related requests.
May I make a comment about that?
Yes, you may.
The state of North Carolina, it's our understanding that Smart Start was supposed to help fund the Dolly Parton Imagination Library for children in Macon County, or not in Macon County, but across the state. But what happens is that any county that's already participating is not eligible to get the Smart Start money. So our children are not going to be eligible without some help from the town and county. And we tried to ask for just enough to cover the kids that are in town, and then some in the county. And the Highlands Literacy Council, they actually paid the startup money, the big money, to get it in the Highlands, and then they offered to let us join in and pay for the kids in the Franklin area.
Right. Well, they're requesting $5,000, and the Literacy Council both requesting $5,000. In the Literacy Council's budget, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library is $29,000. So I don't know. I think we'll probably look again at that in just a few minutes, because you've got kind of an overlap there.
Yes,
between the Literacy Council and...
That's why it seems to be an overlap, because we have to go through them because they pay the big money, and
Right.
then we pay. See, I think it's, $25,000? When we started, it was $25,000 just to even get on to participate for their administrative part.
Right.
That's the part that they paid up front.
I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
I do. I understand.
It looks like there's a double,
It's caught me.
there would be a total of $10,000, and that some of that $10,000 be going to the same place. It's what it appears on the face of it. So, okay. We'll be coming back to you. Yes, sir.
It'll be going to the same place.
I'm sorry, excuse me just a minute. Yes, ma'am.
It's an overlap of funds in that we pay them that money. We're piggybacking on them, so we don't have to come up with that $25,000. So we're piggybacking on theirs, but what we are doing is for the Franklin area children.
And the money that we would put in there would then be going to the Literacy Council.
Well, they're like, when we first started, our money had to funnel through another nonprofit
Right.
because we couldn't stand alone. Well, we funnel it through them, even though we are now our own nonprofit. But we still pay that money for the children in this area.
In Franklin.
Yeah, they have very few children in Highlands that, because they don't have a huge population of children.
Right.
So we're paying for our kids more than their kids. And they have so many programs that they work with. They do programs with the schools, and they're talking about starting another one over at East Franklin School.
Right. Yes.
Do we know how many kids get books in this county or in this town?
I think for the whole county, it's 970, 979, 980.
I was thinking it was 998, but
It changed
somewhere in that.
Almost 1,000 kids?
Almost 1,000 all the time, yes.
And within the town of Franklin, do we know that, or that's just the entire county's
I don't know, I
1,000?
think I put it.
205, it says in
I
the...
think it's on that application.
Yeah, I thought it was.
205.
That will be approximately because
In the town
kids go
itself.
out when they turn 5, and we have more that are being born in and added in. So when they hit 5, they're out.
And that's the address is inside Franklin Township.
I'm still not sure that I'm clear on the children getting the benefits from the tutoring program.
Well, that's the Literacy Council.
That's not.
Well, I know, but now you've also got the Dolly Parton program in here. In the Literacy Council, it is listed.
I don't know anything about the Literacy Council.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
haven't seen their application.
Under program supply expenses, the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, $29,000 in the Literacy Council's budget.
Well, they're not, I don't know that Bonnie's here tonight. I really can't answer that because I don't really have anything to do with their budget. We just know about Read to Me.
Right.
We funnel our funds to them because it saves us money.
For what it's worth, Mr. Mayor, the applicant, and another one of your standards is that all your applicants have to agree if they're awarded a grant, they have to use it for the exact purposes they applied for. What the Literacy Council says that they use it for is for a tutoring program. Now, I realize money is the money, and if it goes into the account, then you could look at it as having offset the cost of the same thing that Read to Me is asking for money for. But what they've said, and what the contract that we would require them to enter into if you award the Literacy Council any money, is that those funds are used for this tutoring program. So it wouldn't necessarily go to the same place as what Read to Me is asking.
But how many students do you have in the Read to Me program within the city limits of Franklin?
205.
205. And what benefits do they get?
Well, they get
A book a month?
For $30 a year, a child gets a book a month mailed to their
So
home.
the 30 times 205? So the cost of that's around $6,150
Correct.
for 205 children in the county.
Right.
I mean, in the town. Any further questions, comments?
It says in the literacy application, it says 400 children in the city limits receive tutoring through them.
That's in the literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the
Right.
usually.
So that's
Right.
what they're asking for money for.
Well,
The other thing is just their whole budget.
yeah, well, see, you've got the Read to Me. Yeah. And the more I think about it, the more confused I'm getting. So,
I have a question about
You, sir.
the Literacy
Certainly.
Council.
Yes, sir.
It's not Read to Me, but Literacy Council. Am I misunderstanding something, or on this budget, is it showing that they had 98,000 in expenses and 295,000 in income?
That's the way I
Which
saw
would
it.
be a $197,000 profit? Am I misunderstanding that, or is that accurate?
That's how I read it.
That's what it looks like. There it is.
It's good to be in Highlands. It's good to be in Highlands.
It is.
Well, that's true in
I know this is literacy council, I know, separate from
Yeah.
Read to Me, but
Right.
I'm just making sure I understood that correctly.
Okay. Well, the Women's History Trail was withdrawn. That request was withdrawn. So, is anybody sharpening up their pencils? And we've got, looks like request of $35,000, Madam Manager, for 55,000.
58 if you count the
58.
3,000 for Arts Council.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
53.
So what we've got to do is to see what we're going to fund and how much we're going to fund each one of these requests. You may, sir.
I have a question I missed at the beginning, and I apologize. About the Arts Council, I got a postcard, I think y'all probably did too, from students at the high school that thanked us for continuing to support arts education. Would that be coming out of the Arts Council?
Absolutely not. In fact, we got one at the Arts Council signed by a student, a senior at Franklin High School. Have no idea. I assume that Tracy Hagan, who is the visual arts teacher at Franklin High, encouraged her students to do this, but we had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Mayor?
Let's have a discussion on...
Yeah, we need to.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think each of us needs to have the opportunity. I'm not comfortable with a few of these. The Cemetery Association, I think, just doesn't fit the criteria of, it's a good faith request, but it's kind of an outlier. I'm just not sure that that's what I had in mind or that we did. I'm having some angst a little bit with the Hospice House Foundation. The public library has always been, that is really a double thing. The county has a lot of, that one I'm thinking about as well, but I just want to hear some feedback from the other members as to which ones are on the shaky list.
Okay, well, mine one right now is the 5,000 request from Read to Me and Literacy Council both. I have a problem there, Mr. Collins. I agree with you on the Cemetery Association. I'm not sure that's something that we need to be involved in at this time. That's the two that I have. But in mentioning the library, I think that is for particular swine, if I'm not correct. It's a microfish thing that is a slap wool out, and I think a lot of people use the heck out of that thing. I know I use it quite a bit. If I want to know what was in the Franklin Press in 1909, I can go and find it. Or if I want to know what happened in some records concerning the town. So it's, gosh knows y'all have been undefended. That's the ones that I have problems with. Yes, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, yes, sir.
I feel like if we're doling out this money, the ones I feel the most urgency to give to are those that are contributing to the health and safety of people who are in our community. And I appreciate the importance of all of these. I really do. But for me, things like Reach, CareNet, Kids Place, things that are looking for the safety and well-being of human beings are at the top of my list. everything else is negotiable to me. But I have my short list. I can tell you what's on it if you want.
Yes, sir.
I have a star next to REACH, CareNet, Kids Place, Hospice, Habitat, and the Community Care Clinic.
Would you do that a little slower?
I'm sorry. REACH, CareNet, Kids Place, Hospice, Habitat, and the Community Care Clinic Center. And like I said, my reason being is simply because I feel the greatest urgency to, those are services that directly impact people's quality of life and or health and well-being.
Mr. Craig?
Well, and this is always the hardest thing we have to do every year.
Sure.
We usually end up disproportionately cutting down and funding pretty much everybody. Because I see your point completely, Brandon, and my heart feels the same way, but then you see all these other things that add value to our town and quality to our town or to the lives of our citizens, and you think, that's what a town's all about. So it just, I'd almost go for just doing the proportional distribution again, like we've done in the past. Because I don't see anybody I really want to cut out. It's the tough part of this.
The first thing, although I'm sure it's good, is there isn't anyone from the Literacy Council here, is there? With them having that in the packet that shows
Surplus?
surplus, I don't see how we can. I mean, we don't have any questions anyone we can pose questions to. So that one, I would like to ask Mr. Henning to maybe clarify that for me about the hospice house, with it being, they're certainly worthy of funds, but I know where we fall into about the positions, funding a position. So as a one-time, so I have a concern with that.
And if you want to go ahead and address that,
Yes, go ahead.
I had the same exact note from your prior meeting, jotted down when we're talking about a position here. In reading through it a little more carefully, I think what they're saying is, anytime, if any of us or any organization you're with was going to get a building loan, that you get a certain amount of money and that's what you have to work against, and your contractor's going to use those funds to construct it, and as you go along, the bank has to have every so often a periodic check that says they have completed this is done, this is good. And that's the services they're talking about using this money for. I don't know that I would consider that. It doesn't mean you have to fund it. I just mean, all I mean to say is, I don't think that initial concern about it being a position and therefore like a recurring thing we're being dependent on for is necessarily there. It's more like an isolated project because it's a fee. You might reasonably say, we don't want to get into paying other professional fees either, because we're not going to become the vehicle for, professionals to come provide services or something like that. That maybe what the council really wants to do with these funds is a more concrete thing that, is a project that you can lay hands on, sort of. So there may be grounds for you to decide, we still don't want to do it. It just does not fall afoul of that problem to me.
On this one, what other, there's Angel Hospice, right? Is this almost not a competitive situation for business?
This is an actual house. Nobody else really has it.
But it's offering the same service. Is this, I'm asking because that's what we're here for, is this not really, there's other providers of it in the same county, but we would be given to one and not the others, who all try to provide treatment for people who need this type of help?
Is the
I'm
other one
asking.
affiliated with Mission? I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
That's what I'm saying, it's affiliated
Yeah.
with Mission.
Our foundation is to provide a facility for hospice patients in our community. And any hospice patients can use the facility once it's up and running, whether it be Care Partners or Four Seasons or West Care. Any,
But what if Four Seasons or West Care or Care Partners were sitting here asking for $5,000? Would that be appropriate?
well, they wouldn't be asking for it for a hospice inpatient facility. That's a whole different thing. They would be asking for the money maybe to help with some of their patients in need, their home care patients. See, this is an inpatient facility that we're providing for hospice patients if they need to come for symptom and pain management or respite or...
I guess most all of these others are the sole provider, basically, with what they provide the town.
But there's no hospice house in, the closest one is like Hendersonville or Asheville.
I think these others, do the other hospice, don't they just go out to a home and provide hospice services in-home?
They do, but those patients also, even though they're at home, they come to the hospice house, to get their pain and symptoms under control, then they go back home.
But the other organizations do not provide, they don't have a physical hospice house.
Right.
They just go in the home or that type of thing.
Correct.
Someone's home.
If they go in their own home, They stay at home because there isn't any place else to go,
Next.
Did that make distinguish or
Hey,
are you all?
I'm behind you all the way now.
All right, let's see, Mr. Culpepper, sir.
Well, I tried to cut this out of our budget to lower the load on our tax base in all candidness. I tried to not fund anybody when we were doing the budget. That being said, I don't think anybody is unworthy of funding that you request. I think everybody is supplying something that is valuable to the town. Again, I just don't know if it's in our wheelhouse to force people within the town of Franklin to give us money and then we decide who gets it. All of you guys are asking and ladies are asking for money to do important things, but there's a lot of people in our community that could do a lot of important things with additional money as well. That being said, I think I could move forward with allocating the money we have budgeted in this fiscal year to the applicants in this community funding pool. But I ask that you take into consideration that this may not happen again. Because again, I don't know that it's a legitimate function of municipal government to tax people at force or using the threat of force and then giving that money away to the charities that we decide.
Yes, well, we had talked about this, but we felt this year everybody expected the money. I mean, we had said we were going to do it, and we didn't want to just cut it out this year. So it's possible we may not be able to do this in coming years. But
This year it's already.
it's budgeted.
Mr. Collins, you're next.
I'm reading the tea leaves. The Literacy Council's troublesome if they've got that much in the budget. And I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, I just don't think the cemetery fits in there. I could go with all the rest of them, and if it's over by 10%, then everybody gets whatever percentage they get of our total budget. I could get talked in about anything today with this crowd.
Well, then may I try?
Well, what?
May I try? I'm a little concerned from the standpoint of everybody just arbitrarily went for the $5,000.
Well,
And no, you cannot blame that.
No, you
But the thing of it is you may have some people that need the 5,000 more than somebody that might get the percentage that we're talking about. And like I said, I think one of the things is the microfiche equipment at the library. I think that's pretty well locked in. I don't think if they don't get the full $5,000, I don't think you would get that. I don't know about something like the Literacy Council will read to me if we cut that back, if it's going to be that much of a hurting, because it will be going into a larger pool. I think pretty much the library, just as an example, has a specific documented need. I'm like Mr. Collins on that. I agree totally. I'm just not sure that the Cemetery Association, and I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, but I just don't feel that that's providing that good a service for the people of Franklin. And I'm open to however y'all want to do it, but I think we do need to look at the ones that requested the 5,000 that needed, and which ones maybe can get by with a lesser amount. But I'm good with whatever this council decides to do.
In the future, instead of complaining, if I could propose a possible solution to this scenario, because this is difficult. If, let's say, this got cut from a budget year, is it within the town's power to have some sort of charity event on the square, bands, lazy hiker, somebody can set up somewhere out there, and we have a gigantic town community fundraising event, festival, carnival, whatever you want to call it, where people pay a certain amount of money and they get a hot dog and a lemonade or a beer or what have you at a downtown event. And those contributions or ticket sales from that could go into a community funding pool in the future. And that way it's not the taxpayer that's on the hook, it's willing providers to help prop up the community funding pool.
May I suggest that what we do, we settle this issue now, and then let's go back, because I'm in agreement that we need to really look at this non-profit funding pool like other towns have done across the state. They're basically getting away from it.
Does anyone know, is United Way still, is it still working in communities? I know at one time that was a thought here.
We did.
And I don't know why there was some opposition to it, but it's like what you're saying, you have.
I can tell you what the opposition was. Do you want me to tell you?
Okay.
Some of these groups just did not want to band with other groups in one big fundraiser. In that way, do you remember that, Mr. Collins? When
No,
we
I
tried
don't.
to do it?
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, it was years and years ago.
So that's not outside the realm of possibilities.
No, not at all. United Way.
We could have a Dunkin' booth where people could pay $5 a baseball and try to dunk us in
Dunk the mayor.
a vat of Kool-Aid.
It's all right, you'll have to get in line.
That'd be a popular booth.
I'm going to hold your hand while we do it. Yes, sir, Mr. Collins.
I'll make a motion that we don't consider the Literary Council or the cemetery, but we do add all of the rest of them, and whatever percentage of the money it is that it takes, that's what we give them.
So when you do the literacy, the literature, the Literacy Council, the cemetery, would that include Read to Me?
No, read to me, I'm leaving it on the
You're okay
table.
with Read to Me?
Yes, and would that not get it down to 48,000?
That'd get it down $10,000.
And so that'd be pretty close, we have 40 in our budget.
You have 40, yes, sir.
So it'd be about 80% or so.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second.
Can I just have a half a second to
Yes, you may.
do some
Discussion now.
doing some figures?
I'm glad somebody is.
While he's doing that, and I can't, I don't know about you, Joe, I didn't go into law because I could do any math. I could do
80%.
Almost none.
80%.
So that's the direction is for staff to enter into contracts on behalf of the town for 80% of the amount requested, or whatever percentage. is
I
off the
believe
funds.
40 is to 48, 4/5.
But one of them only asked for 3,000, so.
Right, that's what I'm trying
But
to
it's still be 80% of 3,000, be 2,400.
It's still 80%? Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. That's my story.
How does everybody else feel about, like, the Cemetery Association as this comes?
Well, we've got a motion on the floor and we've got open for discussion.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
what I was.
Yeah, somebody, Barbara's already okay with it.
Yeah, with the Cemetery Association, that's a big hunk of property, and keeping it looking nice is an asset to the town. The cemetery is an asset to the town. So that would,
I agree, and like I said, I see the importance of all of these. I really, really do. But if we had to trim something, that would be one of the ones I was most comfortable with.
With trimming.
With trimming.
So it seems like we've got one person that's in favor of keeping the cemetery and everybody else seems to be.
Well, Dinah's kind
Well,
of, she's betwixt and
Yeah,
between.
and I'm not wanting
Yeah.
to push it. I'm wanting to.
Let me offer this to the council. I have owed some work on trying to understand the taxable situation, and part of the cemetery got taken in on one of the last involuntary annexation, and we really have needed ever since then to try to really get down to understanding which parts of that need to be broken out for taxes. It's a complicated thing to try to tax a cemetery because the parts of it that are lotted and are for sale are inventory and are taxable, and the parts that have been bought and everything else around it is not. And it's a doozy. But I have needed to get with Mr. Jones and try to work out what that picture is. Let me come back to you about what the overall picture really looks like.
So what you're saying is that technically we could have been taxing them. We're choosing not to, so maybe they're getting the $5,000 another way.
I was going to ask the same question. Have we charged them property taxes?
Well, John said that's a tough one.
It's a doozy.
I can see why.
We've been needing to work at it and really get it down to the final, numbers at some point. So yes,
So the situation could be that they could find themselves in a position of paying town taxes.
but is that the association? The association is a nonprofit.
They are, and again, that's why I need some more time, and that may be a reason to not to, if you're going to hold off on funding anyway. There is a larger issue to address with the overall health of that piece of, it's a large piece of property and it does perform a function for the town. So I think you need to know in the long run what its picture is. And as I say, I already have owed you some work on trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. So I need to come back to you about it anyway.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, there's a motion on the floor, and if I
Does
understand...
he have any thoughts?
I'll be totally honest. I'm in Dave's corner here. I'm kind of want to move away from this process and find something better to do. And I find most of these to be non-recurring, so I'm not sure but to be recurring, so I'm not really comfortable funding a lot of them in the first place. But there's already a motion on the floor.
Yeah, and it
so I'm just
involves
going to leave.
the Literacy Council and the cemetery. Okay.
As far as that goes, I'm comfortable with the motion that's on the floor.
That would be $10,000 taken off of the total. Am I correct on that? Who's the math keeper? Ms.
That's right.
McMahon?
No, sir, I am not a math teacher, I'm a science teacher. I think
You've got all kind of numbers down there.
Yeah, they're all scribbled out.
Okay.
It's $48,000.
$48,000, so
And I think the motion is stated we've got enough to
80%.
figure the exact dollars.
to keep everybody as is, with the exception of the Literacy Council and the cemetery. So
No, you won't keep everybody as is.
No, they'll
You'll
be.
keep everybody the same
At a percentage.
proportion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, with that, what was it, 20% you're knocking off?
That's what I'm
Whatever it
thinking,
is,
yeah.
okay. Okay, where's the finance officer when we...
It's going to be around 78%, give or
Okay.
take, and it's going to wash out in the end. I've sat here and done some math. Those who are looking to get 5,000 are going to end up right around 3,900, maybe a couple dollars less. Those who are looking, the 3,000 ones looking at about $2,300.
Okay. All right, the motion's on the floor. We've had all kind of explanations, so it's time to call for the vote. All in favor of Mr. Collins' motion? 1, 2, 3. Are you voting?
I'm having a hard time making a decision on this. That's a pretty big cut. 3,900 is for some of these, I think. some of these that may need the 5,000 fully, I feel like.
I can't argue.
I'm sorry, I'm
Do
just
the motion.
having a hard time making a decision that quickly.
Just cut those two out
Yeah,
and then figure the,
yeah.
That's where-
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
That's the motion.
Yeah.
so
That's right.
the motion was to cut those two out.
Yes.
And but not
No,
the
but
proportion.
then spread out the 40,000 over the 48,000. And whatever percentage that is. I had 80, but maybe if
It's
you
right.
go one way, it's 80, you
You
back
go
back
other-
down,
yes.
it's other way. So it's not,
Yeah, but Brandon's thinking.
I was
we're gonna have to pull some other people out of the pot if you want to
Yes.
give everybody the
Correct,
full
and that's what I was
5,000.
thinking of, and that's what I was saying, I was just having a hard time making a decision that quickly. But can we have the vote one more time? I apologize.
Okay.
Sorry.
The motion, if I understand it, is to pull the Literacy Council and the Cemetery Association out of the total fund. We will not be funding them. The rest would come out, we would have to total it up percentage-wise from the $40,000 that's allocated for the nonprofit funding pool and proportion it out equally, percentage-wise.
Yes.
Now, is that pretty close?
I think it's right.
All right, all in favor? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we have 4 for and all opposed. 1, 2. Okay. So it's a 4 and 2 vote, and I think that settles it for the nonprofit funding pool. I would like to carry on just a little bit about letting everybody know that there is a possibility that we may discuss doing away with the nonprofit funding pool. Towns across the state are getting away from them. You see tonight the situation the town gets into when it tries to be fair. And have we been fair to everybody? I think we've been as fair as we possibly could. But the thing of it is one thing that we might want to consider is taking that same amount of money of what we allocate and going after 1 or 2 very large projects that definitely meet the public purpose. Where we don't have to get into, is it a recurring thing? Does it meet the public purpose? All of these items, is it statutorily correct and all of this. So, as I said, I have sent out a poll across the state, and the vast majority of towns, including the League of Municipalities, is saying you really need to be getting away from these things. The nonprofit funding pool. So, that being said, let's move on.
Just take about 2 minutes.
You want a 2-minute break?
Yeah,
Okay. 2-minute break from Mr. Collins.
that's right. Give everybody a chance to get the door.
We do appreciate what you're doing for us.
Well,
It's gonna be a little bit.
it is a really difficult decision. All right, let's go back. Call the meeting back to order. We have one more item of business, which I have promptly lost. Madam Manager, help.
Okay, yes, sir.
Here it is.
Got it?
Yes. Okay. I think somebody steals my papers. I really do. They disappear. All right, discussion on Town of Franklin Comprehensive Plan. Counselor, it's your show, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I have been haranguing you for quite some time about the need for, and Justin's been helping me do it, for a comprehensive land use plan. I know that especially as you've been trying to figure out how to give, some meager amount of money to, things that you know are worthwhile, for me to give you a 5-figure thing and say, now I need you to spend for this. But I'm telling you, we really desperately need a comprehensive land use plan for this town. We, again, have had something we've gotten by on for years. It has become a legal liability that is eventually going to come home to roost on us, that we don't have a fully considered, fully fleshed out, comprehensive land use plan.
The thing we were working on, you talking about the UDO?
Well, so the idea is supposed to be, the comprehensive land use plan is supposed to be the flesh on the bones, and the UDO is the bones. It says, here's where the lines are, here's what you have to do, but a broader picture of what you want to see happen in areas. I mean, we've been doing this by this is sort of like feeling it out in the dark. You know that we have these zones that are R1, but we never talked about why they're R1. And if you grew in a direction, which way do you expect things to go from residential to commercial? And do you want to try to influence them to go to commercial? How do you see it fitting in with parking, with bike plan, pedestrian plan? It's darn near everything you've done to try to envision what the town's going to look like in 10 years, all drawn into one document, and then the thing that puts it into effect is the UDO. So it's not enough, and that's why the law says you really need one of these things, because just a regulation that the town just sort of, by hook or crook every time it comes up, figures out how to apply, is not well thought out enough. And again, I say that we have done everything legally and up to par, but it's tough. And I'd be much more comfortable defending somebody saying that you didn't do that if I can say, yeah, we did. Here's our whole plan. So, those are in sort of gushy terms. I hope you have taken a few minutes to look at a comprehensive land use plan that we sent you to see what it is. It's sort of a visioning document for how the whole town's going to develop. And that's the idea. And I don't know if Justin has some other thoughts about the substance of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's since I've been at the town, there's areas also through that way it's zoned that this could address. I mean, you have places that are prominently have all traditional built homes, but it's zoned for mobile homes, and so things that don't fit in the way the use of the zones, and so you get a lot of areas like that. So this can kind of touch on those as well, and areas that need to change, or places that's evolving and changing as well with development and so on. So I mean, I think it's very much a document that's needed, that the legislator even this past year said that the town pretty much requiring the town to have a comprehensive plan. And we've been going on a principles of growth plan that was wrote, which is, I think, about 10, 11 years old now.
Yeah, I think it was at the start of the UDO process.
It was built for the UDO, which is a good document, got some good basics to it, but it's 11 pages. So you can see how basic it is, with a few paragraphs on each page, and then goes to the next item. It doesn't give you a lot of, it just says this is what you should try to strive to, but doesn't give you any roadmap to how to do it.
And the legislative change that Justin is talking about, and we've talked about this a time or two, has been that since I think it was March of this year, every time you have an application for a UDO, for a rezoning, you're supposed to say either why it fits in with your plan, with your comprehensive land use plan, which again, we don't have a bound together plan that's been fully considered as such. We've been able to say where in the principles of growth this thing fits in. Now you're also required, if you're going to turn it down, you have to say why it didn't fit into your plan. So it's got the flavor of something that hands an applicant something to pursue in court. If you don't have this to point at and say, this is why you don't fit within our plan, what you're trying to do here. So again, that's where I think increasingly it's going to become a legal liability not to have a fully considered comprehensive land use plan.
The UDO is what, 20 years old?
No, so it's 2007. So it's 11 years old, and it can always use, and we're constantly kicking the tires on it to say this needs some revision here, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense there.
I guess the point that I'm getting at is to revise it probably would be more trouble than to adopt a whole new plan. We could get excerpts from it, probably, but...
Yeah, and I think it may well drive and tell us where we need to revise it. Because how the UDO has gotten revised so far has usually been, we get an applicant who says, why can't I have this size of building in this area? And we look at each other and go, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. Why does the UDO say what it does? And we'll come back to you and say, consider revising it. If you had a document that says, well, the town has said, we think that this area is more given to commercial, and this is why, we're going to say larger buildings and closer together, or, what have you, make sense in this area, that tells you which direction to go with zoning decisions. So I think it would drive a new look at the UDO.
What do we need tonight? Do we need to adopt the proposals that we've had put forth before us tonight? Is that what we're needing?
So, Mr. Mayor, we're prepared to make a proposal and make a suggestion to the council to consider Stewart Consulting. That clearly is not the least expensive of those at $85,000. That is still a good bid, by the way, because Justin went and reviewed all of those with the bidders. Tonight it would just be to authorize us to enter into negotiations with the firm that if you take our suggestion with Stewart Consulting. We would come back to you with a final agreement before you did it. Also, our intent is to stretch that. I know it's a large amount of money, to stretch it out over 2 budget years, so it's not, to stretch out the sticker shock.
Are they the ones that did the Laurel Park?
I think, which one was Laurel Park, remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think Teague did.
I think that's right. I think it was Teague. And again, I know we're not pointing at the lowest price here and telling you to go with that one, and I wish we were. There are reasons we feel like Stewart is. This is, for one, you're not legally required in this circumstance to go with the lowest responsive bidder because it's a service contract, not construction. We feel like there's a lot of different reasons that Stewart is in the best position of all of these to help us. They have local staff in addition to central staff where are they located? Charlotte. We feel like they're in a better position than any of them to get us the kind of plan that really fits the town.
Okay, so what's the feeling of the board? Any questions or comments or discussions, Paul? You look like you do have,
No, I just think, we should have done this a long time ago.
You had that look.
That was what my look was saying. We should have done this a long time ago.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yes, sir.
Summer, this is the group that you like out of this grouping, or the one that you think will do the town the best service?
Yes, out of this group, after reviewing all the proposals and speaking with your land use administrator and your attorney, I do feel like this would be the best group for the town to use.
It's been well vetted, I think. Yeah.
2 more quick questions.
Sure.
I know I asked this exact same question, but just for clarity, if we're going to do this plan gets put into place, it takes, I think it's like a 12-month process. 5 years from now, it's much cheaper and much easier to update this plan. It's not going to cost $85,000 again.
Correct. I think this is a down payment on many, many years of trying to keep a vision for how the town develops, and it is something you review every so often. If you didn't make any changes for 10 years, though, I think you'd be way further down the road to saying this needs to be tweaked and that needs to be changed. We need to change the dates, and we're good.
That's the life expectancy is about 10 years, though?
Only because I think nobody's really willing to say, I'm definitely telling you how this town is in 30 years.
Right.
But I think you'd have a basis for updating it and not having to reinvent the wheel at the end of that 10 years.
Mr. Setzer, would they provide this in electronic form where we could also do all the changes by going into and doing it without having to have books reprinted and all that?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. You'd have it be on once it would be completed, it'd be online. And
that's where I was coming from.
Yeah.
So we could also have it on our website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like our bike plans on the website.
And that still is our intent to go. We're not going to have 8,500 printed copies of everything around here, like it has been. And I think they.
Yeah, one more question. The devil's in the details, as always. I believe it says it's $85,000, but there's also contingencies that can cost more and add to that fee. Shot in the dark, any kind of estimate on what those additional fees are going to be?
No, but that's something to fully explore in the written agreement. And again, I'm not asking you to write a check for $85,000 tonight, just to authorize us to enter into.
Tonight's what he said.
Negotiate it.
That's the operative word, tonight.
80%.
Man, this feels like a damn root canal without insurance, I swear.
But I mean, they should be able to tell us, you know, they've done 3 towns the size of Franklin in the past, and their overages were $5,000 per job, $12,000. We should have a much better idea than 85 plus.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's to be, I completely agree.
Okay. So we've got the motion.
Can I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible it could be less, or is, I mean, well, I mean, I looked at Laurel Parks, and a lot of the stuff in there that I was looking at, I could have written. So I was just wondering, I mean, especially the part about the historic preservation and.
How much you gonna charge?
Well,
Well, that would be real cheap.
Summer saved us a bunch of
I
money.
think as we go along, there'll be input from this board.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're gonna have.
God, I hate this one.
I agree, this is tough, and
I don't see this.
Really?
Y'all want to clue us in on what you're talking about? Bring it on.
I mean, you know, I'm with the board on this one. I just ain't seen $85,000 worth of need. I swear I have.
I was going to say that I believe that our manager and her department have saved the town a substantial amount of money with the shifting of some positions and saving of some salary positions, and some of that money could possibly help offset this cost.
I wish that were the case if it was in a different fund that's in your water and sewer enterprise fund, and this would need to come out of general.
But you have saved the town substantial sums, right?
I hope so, yes, sir.
Yeah, when she's looking for a raise, she'll remind me.
Okay. Well, that's another subject for another night. All right. We've got a motion on the floor.
I'm not sure there is a motion. I think John gave us the.
Let me finish. I think we're going to have a motion on the floor that we adopt, and basically I think the motion will say that we're authorizing the manager, the planner, and the council to pursue this.
Yes,
Is
we're
what
in
we're-
negotiations with Stewart Consulting for a maximum of $85,000 spread out over 2 fiscal years.
And we're not spending the money tonight.
Correct.
One more quick point worth noting, because I'm trying to be fiscally conservative on this board, but the town has spent a substantial amount of money several times on parking studies, in at least one Whitmire study. I would hope to expect this study to mitigate the need for those future studies. I mean, we're not going to bleed out 20,000 here on a parking study, 13,000 here on a Whitmire study. So while 85,000 is a very large chunk up front, in the next 10 years, what micro studies will we have doled out at least that much money for?
Excellent point.
I mean, it is supposed to be the 10,000-foot view of where do we see every inch of this town going over the next 10 years. And so, I think that not only that, but the more recent work you've had done, like parking work, probably can be included in what we're doing now. So, yes, it should save you from having to do those things again in the future.
And it seems like we're somewhat locked into where we're going to be growing right now with the attitude in Raleigh, let's just say. Okay, is everybody's question? Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, one thing maybe we could do as well to kind of answer some of your questions in regards to other expenditures, if we can go ahead tonight and reach out to this firm and kind of secure a proposal, get more of a formal quote before we enter into anything for this fiscal year, we would bring it back to council because that would have to come from your contingency. So just keep that in mind, that this wouldn't be a vote tonight to divvy that up, just to let us explore some more options.
In fact, do we even need a vote if we're just going to give a consensus for y'all to proceed?
I mean, you're not giving final approval or
No.
anything. I just, given the nature of the topic and
Yeah,
how much
no
we're
matter.
talking about, I just wanted to make sure everybody is okay.
I'll make a motion if you want me to make a motion.
Sure.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance, so I make a motion.
That's a motion, okay.
Piper picked the paper.
I mean, I had 5 years of college and that's what I learned.
I'll second.
That's not bad out of a 2-year college. Okay, all in favor? I don't think there was any further discussion, okay. All right, I don't think there's any more business. We have a joint meeting with the county commissioners in Highlands tomorrow night. And I can't think of anything else. Real briefly, the City Vision Conference got canceled. It was supposed to be in October, the middle part of October. It's been rescheduled to Hickory in May. The league has voted with its executive board and board of directors not to hold any more statewide meetings during hurricane season. And I think that was why. So they are moving the statewide meetings to May. Okay, anybody else?
Move we adjourn.
You want to go around the table because we didn't do it last meeting?
Well, we can.
I just want to know if anybody had anything to say.
I don't hear any. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And I think Mr. Collins made that motion.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
We'll just talk about it. There you go. That'll work.
Hey, Ryan?